Alright then. Continuing with our ProtoBlanka. And just in case it's necessary, as always noted, this content is being rebroadcast from Brilliant2_MK to the main 2_MK channel with full permission. And it's almost good that we got broken there, because now we have the ability to use that for a summary. What we still need to work in is V-trigger and target combo, slide, command grab, and vertical rolling. Unfortunately, we've really only got 2 recordings left to do all that in. On the upside, a little creativity can probably get us through most of that, since the target combo might be handling itself already. So let's ignore the target combo requirement for now, and just deal with the vertical rolling and the other stuff. Vertical rolling is a kick input. This is a little bit unhelpful because everything we've done up to now where we've held buttons has been otherwise. In Blanka's case, noting, we will have held the punch in almost all cases. The reason why that's not useful is we can't do a perfect instant jump kick and then result in no actual kick. We've got no way to make Blanka just jump currently. In order to achieve that, we would have to find some way of something holding down a kick at the end. Well, we do know that we need his movement stuff, and his movement stuff are back and forward of kicks, so we can probably slip those in at the end of something. The problem is we don't get down back for this. So it's starting to get a little bit stressful to fit the rest of it in. His forward triple kick and back triple kick can definitely help us to allow him to jump, but they would also usually have their own functions and work properly without anyone actually being able to do anything about it. The thing that helps us the most with this generally is that if you do for most charge characters that have upward charge moves, and I think I'll demonstrate this directly on Chun-Li rather than actually recording anything. If your timing is correct, that happens. And this is what will save us, probably. It's super hard to do for a lot of people, but you can always move the button. So please note that despite nearly everything you know about how this game handles moves, you cannot do V-skills. If you are on the ground and hold any direction whatsoever, you will do the V-skill. But for charge characters, when they go to up, this isn't true. Now, how is this useful to Blanka? Well, it's further useful to Blanka because vertical rolling is a kick input. So even if you had a clash between which of the two things was done, it wouldn't matter anymore. He'd still just do vertical rolling normally. The problem with this is that one of the things we need to understand the most about Blanka is how to do the EX version of this. So you'd have to get to the point of doing this. all as one input. For me, this is difficult because of the quote-unquote lag on my hand, and I would need to change the buttons to get it consistently. But a little practice will probably get me there if I needed it for some other reason. But what we need to understand from the Blanka side is this. If Blanka does EX roll, he can do that while holding down or otherwise using his V skill button. EX up roll, mind you. If you do this right, you can cause other things to happen if you need them. So we have a good option selecty thing that allows us to stuff a lot of outcomes into one input. Because if Blanka happens to not have charge and be being hit or something of that nature, he might be able to do his V skill without leaving the ground. We're gonna have to check it, but in Chun-Li's case, if you hit this, the timing can be such that she does her V skill instead of jumping. It's obviously, along with nearly everything else in these bots, relatively hard to do. Blanka's not going to be easy bot to input. This is actually slightly easier for me if I just hit straight up, but straight up doesn't always like to do that. What you will get though is that a lot of the time if you do it on landing, this will be fine. And that is still useful enough to do this for Blanka. It's currently useful enough. It also happens off the recovery of certain other moves. But the timing is very strict. The main thing to understand and remember is that this is possible and that you can use it for something. We can use it to hide an extra V trigger input, well, V skill input. So if we start from the idea that vertical rolling will allow us to get that, and that certain moves will allow you to get away with certain other things quickly, we have the options of making sure we do that, or something else, or jump without doing anything. How do we achieve that? And what would you want to press after that specific up forward? What would Blanka want in the air? Because if we assume that he has the up ball and that's what's happened, what do we want him to hit, if anything? The usual answer in these situations is nothing whatsoever. What we want is to just go back to down back charge. So for Nakali, which I'm now going to record it on, you can usually stop the recording at just about the spot where he would have done a regular attack. And that should be good. So how does this act when it's by itself? He just jumps a lot. That's fine. In almost all situations, this is what he will do. Jump a lot. If you can get yourself to hold onto the medium kick, then you can solve some other problems. if you can get yourself to hold the V skill button, you just get jumps. This is actually really good for many reasons. Because there's no indicator of turning off or releasing a button. What you get is this. You now have something with the capacity to do different types of moves altogether. Jump in attacks. So we've basically given him the ability to do vertical rolling in certain situations, to do V-skill in other situations when he lands after certain things, to do various jumping attacks because sometimes he will jump without it being a problem, and to even occasionally do some air-to-airs depending on what buttons he's hit and what buttons were being held otherwise. And we already know that the way this works with the action 3 is that the triple kick is going to help us out. In Blanka's case, that's not going to happen off of action 3, but we can still get it. And we can still get it because he does have a triple kick thing that we need to work with. And that will be our last recording slot. Our last recording slot for Blanka will be what in Nakali's case I will switch over to triple punch, but you want the movement of the surprise forward. Surprise back is probably not going to be as useful to us and we therefore care less. The surprise forward, however, will be useful because it gives us his EX roll when it's coming out of other stuff. If he happened to use his V skill, it should give us a forward motion without actually rolling. And then, that's around the sort of time that it's probably good for us to sneak in the Wild Hunt, the command throw. So in Nakali's case, we want triple and then full back. So for Nakali, with those on, we're seeing some other weird behaviors. As noted, it doesn't always seem to want to do the... There we go. I really need to understand why that works that way. It's a good thing we didn't try on BlankaBot too much. It would have turned out to be terrible. So what are we lacking now? Well, if we give Nakali all of these on, we'll see how he behaves for a little bit as we're getting close to the end. But in Blanka's case, we're lacking his slide thing. It's probably the only thing we're really lacking. What we're going to hope is that it's possible to use the forward and down forward heavy punch, in this case down forward triple punch, in the third input, and sometimes get that slide. Because the good thing about that is it's perfectly slotted. You want to go from that slide straight into blocking. If you hit with it, good. If you didn't hit with it, then you probably want to block. So what we want is the capacity to do the forward into down forward into triple punch, which also will trigger the V reversal, mind you. It should also trigger the last part of the target combo. It should allow him to do the regular things out of his coward crouch itself. And after all that, it should still let him do the slide and the defense from the slide. And at that point, the only thing he's really lacking is his CA. You can in fact consider the bot to be complete at that point. There's not a whole lot more that Blanka needs to be able to do. The problem now is that we haven't managed to get a lot of Blanka's normals into this bot. And we're going to have to try to hide some stuff somewhere and make him complex in terms of what a good Blanka strategy is, which buttons he deals well with physically, which buttons give other people the most stress when they try to deal with it. But whereas Necalli's movement is a lot more restricted with just this version of inputs, you're much more likely to see some more creative stuff out of Blanka. There will also be some specifics as to how to handle the V trigger motions and the V skill ones. But do remember that part of the reason why this works for Necalli is because he has a lot of movement, and that movement prevents a lot of the moves from actually coming out. So you will see him actually hit the V skill button, even the standing standard one. Not often, because again, it's specifically designed so that he generally won't hit the V skill. But there it is, it does exist. And with Blanka, we're likely to see it a little bit more, because his movement and his rhythm will be different. Unfortunately, I can't be sure that I've gotten everything correct in terms of the rhythm because I haven't seen the character yet. But I'm willing to work from here. I'm willing to say, give this a try, see what you come up with, and at the end of the stream I will get this worked up and you can have the proto ready in advance. Unfortunately, given the complexity of certain of these inputs, it doesn't go well in a tweet, but you'll still get some idea. I'm not even going to ask where you get that from, but I'm thankful you get it because I might not have to work to give Blanka that either. Now I just need them to give me a way to transfer like the inputs from one bot over to another. But as you can see here, Necalli doesn't have a lot of empty space. He's basically functional. He's got the what would be the equivalent of ground shave rolling. And if I actually reset this, and let's go to stage select since I have a good reason to save these inputs anyway. In fact, let's do the hard test. The hard test of any such bot is to use Ryu and see how you mess around with their rhythm when you do various things. This doesn't tell us anything about Blanka, of course. There's our cancel. There's our heavy punch. There's our trigger style activation. And basically all I do is stand here and hit parry. Sometimes if I recognize the bot's rhythm well enough, which takes a little while, I might actually parry some things intentionally. It's unlikely though. Mashing it is not necessarily going to help, but you're watching it for rhythm. And just watching for the rhythm alone is enough to help me understand what went wrong, what went right. and how certain things can be done best. For example, if Blanka, like Necalli, has the capacity to cancel out of his stuff into that, basically to do the first 2 hits of his target combo and then do his V skill, we might get some good stuff out of that too. This is also obviously my new Necalli bot, because as I said, there's not really much work that needs to be done to make this different. If you're not familiar with the matchup, this will probably carry you along. You can even therefore treat this as a Necalli bot stream. And I might even release it. The problem is that Necalli cares a lot more about the direction you hit when you do his V skill, and therefore fitting all of his stuff in doesn't work as well. Also, it has no stomp. But I can probably find something to take out, because a lot of this is intended entirely to have him do 2 roll style things, which are unnecessary. That probably works better on Blanka than it does on Necalli. And if not, I'll just shift that around. So overall, I have a working prototype without even having the character at this time. Hopefully you can use this information for your own prototype, but if you find it difficult, just stop by next week, same time, at which point I will have Blanka, and just be inputting basically the same commands, and seeing what I get. Of course, by then, hopefully I will have far more work done on it, and you'll just be looking at commands, maybe a little different, maybe a little more perfected. But until then, here's your final data on what you need and what the inputs for BlankaBot prototype are moving forward. You'll be using a forward throw with possibly a plinked punch. In Blanka's case, it must be that the punch comes first if you plink. And you are aiming to do this on the first frame so that you don't miss the input. You are trying to hold some stuff later on, and you need some complicated edge shifting going on there. Into down back, medium punch, probably. For Blanka, that might be a kick. You'll figure it out fairly fast, and of course you'll be able to use the whatever tweet we make. If you understand this, you're probably good. And the purpose of this is to give a throw, a light forward roll, a charge, and to mess around with the V skill. Input 2, really simple, super simple. V skill into V trigger. This may need to be done very fast because depending on how long you have to wait before Blanka cancels out of his V skill, you may not be able to get anything too good. We're going to have to check a lot on the behaviors. Hopefully, this input doesn't recognize the V trigger as anything, and therefore whatever follows this will become the follow-up for Blanka's V skill. Third input, and this one needs a little bit more demonstration because I must turn on a slight delay in the playback so that you can actually see what it does. This is hitting a forward triple punch on Blanka. Here it's kick, but on Blanka it will be a punch. Forward triple punch. Hold down back. And make sure you held the triple punch the entire time. Relatively easy. You can change how much you hold down back based on what exactly you want him to do. Always make sure you are holding down back at the end, or it will become difficult to make the bot act as it should. Fourth input, we tend to put this sort of thing on this input. You're doing an instantly jumping V skill input. Hopefully you can get this on first frame too. It's not necessarily that easy to do, but you are seeing the result of what it looks like when it is on the first frame here. You hold it down the entire time. And for the sake of being clean, you hold down back in the air as well. So it is up forward V skill, hold the V skill for the entire time, hopefully on the first frame. This is actually a little lenient in that if you don't hold the V skill on the first frame, the most likely thing that will happen is that his jump-ins will be bad. Which isn't too terrible when you're getting used to Blanka at the beginning. If this turns out to not work because Blanka's system is a little different for how this goes, I'll let you know. And if you happen to press forward just before you hit the up forward, as I might have done here, Blanka might act a little differently, so you're going to have to be careful about it. It might be a little difficult to input at first. And the final input is really simple. In Blanka's case, this will be a triple kick input, which unfortunately seems to indicate that he won't have his super based on this. But you might be able to trick it in a particular way, specifically by hitting the triple kick and then hitting a punch right after. And then doing a half circle back from there. So it's forward, triple kick in Blanka's case, half circle back, and press the button to end the recording at that point. That's all the time we have. Please note, as mentioned before, that there may be some tweaks with the action 3 as mentioned. A more difficult perfect version would involve hitting forward triple punch, or rather hitting forward and then down forward very quickly and hitting the triple punch on the down forward input. But this bot will tend to have a lot of times where it has spent its time charging. You may want to change whether or not he has enough time to charge up a full thing sometimes just because of this. But in this particular input, he should definitely be charging a fairly long time, because if you get it right, naturally it will do slide his Amazon River run at least some of the time. And you want to have the bot block after that, and probably go into a move if it's planning to go into anything. It may go into a throw, which is also good because it techs the throw. But it's more likely going into light roll, depending on whether or not you did a certain thing at the beginning of that input. There will definitely be lots of variants, and there may be some that differ by character depending on how Blanka can be punished for certain moves when he spaced them properly, and how he can be punished for certain moves when he spaced them improperly. But Slide should generally be unsafe at close enough range that we really don't care what he does after it, and what he does when he's far enough out would probably depend on a lot of other buttons he can hit. At the moment, we don't have anything specific that will let him hit his down back heavy punch. We're probably going to try to slip that in there somehow. Or if his down back heavy punch turns out to be really good compared to his medium punch, we may have you hit the medium punch and heavy punch together in the first input, and see what we get from there. So look out on our Twitter 2_MK_FGC on Blanka release day for a confirmation of the main inputs, and use our glossary of terms on 2-mk.org to understand what we have managed to cram into basically probably one tweet. Some explanations may follow in a tweet thread, of course. And of course, let us know if you find anything that works, doesn't work, needs to be changed, or generally should be approached entirely differently because of Blanka's buttons, and any people who intend to take up Blanka and are setting out to learn the character fairly early on. Let us know any first order strategies you come up with, stuff that is obviously a good thing to go for, that the bot does not contain, and therefore people would not really learn. It would be greatly helpful to the community to know what it is to look out for, and for us to be able to provide a training partner to help them look out for it. This is Berillian for 2_MK. Good night, everyone.